The governors, collectively and individually, presented a request to the federal government for refund. And among the components of the claim presented for the consideration of the federal government was a component relating to the payment of these consultants that are now constituting the subject of contention. When the claims were eventually processed and paid to the to the Governors Forum, they indeed on their own, without the intervention of the federal government, took steps to make part payment to the consultants, acknowledging their liability over same. And then 4 or 5, when eventually they made such payments, at a point they took a decision to stop the payment. The consultants instituted an action in court against the Governors Forum. And what happened in court? They submitted to consent judgment. Thereafter, the federal government, under the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, was requested to comply with the judgment and effect payment.
Well, now the controversy, the consultants on one hand, the governors on one hand, and the Attorney General in the middle, and he said, look, all this noise is unjustified. Let's make a sense of it and allow someone who is in the know. Mr. Eze Onyekwere, a very senior lawyer and the executive director of the Center for Social Justice, he joins us live in our studio here in Abuja. Thank you so much, Mr. Onyekwere.
My pleasure.
Help us make sense of it. Now, the money involved here, at some point, it was touted to be in the region of $418 million US that's supposed to be deducted to be paid to these consultants. What is going on?
Well, if you look at the quantum of the money, we are discussing about 173 billion if you were to use the official exchange rate of about 415. If you are to use the street value of over 600 naira, we are discussing about 275 billion. Now, the question that some of us are wondering, yes, there could possibly have been a transaction between the Governors Forum and some consultants, is the fact that the passion, the zeal with which the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice is pursuing the payment of this sum seems to suggest that there is an interest beyond the public interest, because the Attorney General is the defender of the public interest. What is the public interest involved in this? At a time, most of these states are unable to pay workers their salaries, unable to pay retirees their pensions or gratuities, unable to fund even minimal capital expenditure. So what exactly did the consultants recruit the Honorable Attorney General as their counsel to make sure that this money gets back to them? And the Governors Forum, the letter written by the Ekiti State Governor, is suggesting that the case they went back to court to see if they can set aside whatever judgment that was earlier entered. If we are discussing the rule of law, I believe the Honorable Attorney General should allow that process to run to its conclusion so that you don't overreach whatever information or whatever the decision of the court should be. And so the question is, whose interest is the Honorable Attorney General serving? The public interest or the interest of a few consultants? Now, even when I sit back and wonder what were the terms of reference of these consultants? What special competencies or services did they bring to the table that entitled them to this kind of humongous amount of money?
So the question Nigerians are asking is, what did they do
What exactly did they do? If it was reconciliation of figures, each of these states has an accountant general, a minister of finance where you have the best accountants, good economists, good statisticians. If it was a legal puzzle, each of these states had an Honorable Attorney General and had lawyers in their Ministry of Justice who could resolve the puzzle. So what exactly did these consultants do to be able to earn this kind of money? And these are the kind of things that is giving things like consulting a very wrong name and also misdirecting our use, because somebody will sit somewhere down and say, can I get this kind of job? A job that has no proper definition. What strikes me is that whoever that entered into this agreement did not do it in the best interest of the states. He didn't use the best good faith in entering into this kind of transaction. So yes, governance is a continuity. If your predecessor entered into an agreement, therefore you are bound one way or the other to continue. But I think this kind of consulting agreement should be questioned in terms of value for money. What did you deliver to be able to claim $480 million?
Let's look at it. For the consultants to be engaged, some lawyers will say it was done under agency law and law of contract.
Yes.
That means that you said I should do this on your behalf,
yes,
and you will give me a certain amount to be done. Whose fault is it now? They've done their jobs, and the agreement is on money to be paid. Whose fault is it if it's now been seen as humongous or the money is too much?
Now,
it was a contract that was entered into in ab initio, isn't it?
The governors that entered into this contract, or whoever represented the governors, they were supposed to be acting on behalf of the citizens, because these governors are not leading themselves. All they do is to take taxpayers' money, or whatever the transactions they're entering is on behalf of the taxpayer. So if from the way things are turning out, there is evidence that due diligence was not exercised, proper caution was not exercised, or that whatever services these people brought to bear was actually overpriced, or that it was not done in good faith to the best interest of the citizens, should we simply keep quiet and say, oh, it's a contract is a contract, therefore we should pay out this kind of money for a service that nobody is sure of what exactly has happened? So I think the Governors Forum, Governor Kayode Fayemi, is saying that they're challenging these things. Let them reopen this case. Question in terms of calling this gentleman to say, come, yes, you said you have a consultancy agreement. Please tell us, tell Nigerians what exactly you did. And then we can be able to even know whether you merited being paid anything. Because as far as I'm concerned, that was a shady contract, okay? Entered on behalf of maybe the 36 states and the local governments, and people are now claiming humongous amounts of money that nobody can justify. And like I did say, is it a legal issue? Didn't you have lawyers in your Ministry of Justice? Is it an accounting or calculation issue that you don't have accountants, you don't have economists, you don't have statisticians? What exactly was the service?
What kind of conundrum does the president find himself? Because at some point we understand that there was an approver, yes, and there was at some point there was a renege on that approver for, yes, the release of that fund. If you were the president, I mean, legally speaking, because the Attorney General is being sought to get his legal opinion, advice on how way to go in these.
Now, the same Attorney General that is advising that this money be paid like yesterday has sat over so many judgments, especially human rights cases, where courts have awarded damages and compensation to victims of human rights violation. And you cannot execute judgment against the federal government until you get the consent of the Attorney General, which is an old relic. You go to the court with the Attorney General, argue a case, you win, you still go back to him to get that consent. So many judgments are there. Do we have a list of all the judgments that have been entered against the federal government and the states? Why is he so passionate about this particular one? So what the state governments are even alleging is like that there is an interest over and beyond what the public interest should be. So I think the case should be reopened. And once it is reopened, a lot of things could actually come out by the time these people give an account of what they're doing. If I am the president, considering the circumstances we find ourselves, I am not authorizing the payment of any money. Let the legal process, due process run.
I understand that it's going to the Supreme Court.
Yes, yes. No. But the governor said they're back at the Court of Appeal. And they said even the case at the Supreme Court that there was no definitive statement to say pay X or Y.
The threat of order of mandaments.
Yes.
And also threat of the fact that there are some national assets that could be in jeopardy. These are some of the issues that have been brought to
the governors have said there is no such threat. But if you are making a threat, you go back to the courts. Let the courts issue you that specific order. You don't simply anticipate what the courts will do. And then because you're Attorney General, you now say, okay, let's do this before X or Y happens. And I'm still saying, how many other judgments do we have against the federal government, against the states that have not been implemented in terms of compensation to today? What is so special about this particular judgment? The president, knowing the situation of the economy, should not be approving the freighting away of our public resources.
I mean,
and I'm happy that the president, after presentations were made by both sides, decided to say, let's put a stop to this until I'm properly advised.
There is going to be fear now about working for government as consultants. Those who do this for a living will be wondering, if you go into a consultancy job with the government, the fear that things might go south could happen. So what lesson have we learned in this regard now, policy-wise?
If you do an honest job, you should have nothing to fear. But if you do a job where you go behind with those who are supposed to approve a contract and they inflate the price of what you are supposed to have done, or even something is not clear what service you are rendered, I believe you should face a lot of hurdles. People have been working for government over the years. People have been supplying things. People have been rendering services. They've been paid. But even this $418 million that's remaining, it's even a fraction. It's like a good part of it had been paid out.
Where are these money supposed to come from? Is it supposed to be part of the Paris Fund?
Yes.
Or part of
the refund to the states and the local government. So it is money the federal government is supposed to refund back to them. It is a part of it that these people are claiming. So I even understand some part of it had been paid out before. And why this particular one is, people are now saying, the governors are now saying, wait a minute. They sat back to calculate what was the percentage these people are collecting simply because of a transaction. Nobody's actually sure. Is it that they went to court to be able to get this? Is this legal fees? No, there's no record that they went to court.
Have we learned any lesson?
The lesson is that most of these kind of transactions should no longer be done nicodemously. Let me use that word. They should be in the public domain. If by the time these consultancies were being negotiated, that Nigerians knew, or residents of this state knew that state A was going to give away $50 million. And in that state, you have senior advocates of Nigeria, you have big accountants and economists. They will say, wait a minute, why are we paying out this money? What service is this gentleman or this company rendering to the state? And on that basis, it could have been renegotiated. But these things were shrouded in secrecy. And by the time it came out, it was already getting a bit late. Now that people are asking to be paid.
Mr. Yokere, the noise of the governors are justified.
Extremely justified.
We'll wait on the courts to determine finally. So they're going back to the Court of Appeal before in case of anything, they might go to the upstairs.
Back to the Supreme Court.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yokere, for clarifying and giving perspective to this. Thank you indeed for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.